As much as we see everything that you should put in place, we also know that there is still that potential of having an incident happen and then having the follow-up from the Office of Civil Rights saying, hey, we're going to have to come review some of this with you and see if you were doing what you should as an organization to prevent that. We've seen different types of notifications where they'll give you a call and say, we're going to be reaching out soon, or they'll just send you the letter. Often a clock starts as little as 30 days. In 30 days, send us these 15, 20 things. If you're doing everything right, you've got a lot of that together. They will ask you for a narrative. You're going to want to explain what occurred, the actions that you took immediately, and what you found so far as you've investigated this breach. This is how it happened. This is what was exposed. You took these steps because you were prepared. This narrative is where you're going to share, this is what we did. The other thing that you probably have to create is a story of what you had in place, an explanation of why it's not an organizational failure. It was a hopefully one-time event that occurred. This is what we were doing to try to avoid this type of situation. Right. Following that, evidence becomes this big part of it. Depending on the type of breach that occurred, there's going to be an ask for several types of policies.
You may be notified a year or 2 years after that breach occurred. Provide your policies at the point in time in which that occurred, as well as any updates that you've made to those.
Yeah, what's the retention period on policies? 6 years.
Don't throw away the old
toss
ones.
the folder because you got a new set.
And all the logs and everything.
Next, consistently across all the OCR letters is send us your latest enterprise-wide security risk analysis. Sometimes it's the last 5 or the last 3 or just the last one. How were you responding to and taking action on the risk analysis? That is an exact request in the letter from OCR. And then also the date of the next SRA. So what are you doing next? How are you stepping up your risk efforts if needed? So policies and procedures will be very contingent on the type of breach that occurred. We've seen providing and terminating access for employees. How are you managing access to the environment?
Password management.
Encrypting, decrypting PHI. Are you encrypting PHI at rest? Are you encrypting it in transit? Are you using secure messaging? Your backup policies and procedures? And for each of these, there's a corresponding evidence. Are you doing audits? And where's your audit log? Are you doing backups? And where's your backup testing log? What's your procedure for protecting PHI from alteration or destruction? How are you ensuring the patient health information is not destroyed or lost? And then documentation specifically of how we implement systems to track all of this. So implement systems to track alterations to PHI, to track access to PHI, controls that should protect patient information. That's going to be something that you're going to want to document and be able to show.
This isn't what you do in response. This is what you're doing all along.
And this is why you're doing it. It's A, to prevent anything from happening, but again, B, if it does, it's to show that you were doing what you could. Think through what touch points you have with any other vendors, any other companies. Ensure BAs are in place for all of that. Yeah, this breach occurred over here, this is what happened. And then they said, well, that's using this other system, so show us your BAA with it. We saw proof of the training program asked for as well. Show us what you're doing for training and where's your audit to show that your employees have completed the training. A couple of these have asked for copies of the breach notification letter sent. The process you followed once the breach occurred, the investigation, the notifications, all of that become part of the package you're going to produce. And if you neglect to notify the government or people affected in the period of time that you have, that heightens the investigation, that heightens your risk of penalty. When a breach occurs, you have control over what happens next. You have to take great care to execute on everything you're supposed to do following a breach because you're going to be using that as evidence that you knew what to do and you responded appropriately.
Continue your training plan. Continue updating your policies and procedures. If you have holes in those, address those. Move forward because that's going to show progress and intent to address those to the OCR if they should investigate.
Build on it and learn from the experience.
Provide all the information and keep your program moving forward.